Broadcasting live from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios. KXST AM, North Las Vegas. KXTE HD3 Pahrump, Las Vegas. CBS Sports Radio, 1140, a radio.com station. The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
All right, welcome. The doctors are in, Raider Nation. It's time for your Raider Nation bye-week therapy session as your future Las Vegas Raiders get a much-needed week off to try, and I say try, and figure out what went wrong. This is a team in search of an identity, in search of something that will help them turn things around and win some games. It's going to be hard. Playoffs are out of the question, I believe, but some improvement and evaluation are not. Welcome back to Las Vegas's only All Raiders talk show, coming to you live from a rainy, thunder-rumbled Las Vegas. Yes, we had thunderstorms last night, not something we get often here in the desert. And from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios for another week of Raiders football talk on the Silver and Black today. Hi, I'm Scott Gulbransen, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Gutierrez, who is much cleaner this morning despite the rain than yesterday after he ran his 10th Tough Mudder, correct? 12th. Okay, sorry.
12th Tough Mudder.
I had the under, so I went with 10. But
no. That was my 12. I'm feeling it today, too, man.
Oh, dude, I can imagine.
This time yesterday, I was about 5 minutes into that race. About, I'd say, I don't know, maybe a mile and a half in, we're going straight uphill. I mean, steep, just straight up it felt like. We get to the top, and there's this obstacle there called skid marked. Hilarious. It's a wooden wall, but it's angled at you. So you gotta get up, jump, grab the top, and pull yourself up. There's little footholds if you need them. I get my foot on one of them, and you just got done hiking straight uphill for who knows how long. My left calf cramped up on me like would not believe.
Like a ball in your calf?
Oh, so bad. I worked it out pretty quickly, but it basically felt like I was flexing my calf for the rest of that race. So today, my left, just imagine flexing a muscle for 3 hours. That's what my leg feels like today.
Does not sound fun.
And he was still able to go home and give himself a haircut.
No, I did it before.
You did it before? Okay.
A couple days before.
Yes, and we've always called our Silver and Black Today correspondent, David Stepanian, and he's going to transition into now. He's going to do some producing for us on the PG and engineering. David is with us. He is going to step in and do that. How are you doing, our heedful producer engineer?
Oh man, it's awesome. It's living the dream, producing and engineering your guys' show.
Yes,
couldn't have asked for more.
Although I have to say that you wearing a Michigan hockey jersey is a fireable offense.
This is pretty awesome. I think this Michigan hockey jersey specifically because it's pretty cold, man. So I'm awake graveyard hours because I'm graveyard at Wiesen. And I'm driving home like 3-4 hours ago, and dude, it was flooded. It was flooded like nothing. Tropicana, well, you just couldn't drive down there. Traffic was going like 15, 20 miles an hour. Puddles everywhere. Like it was terrible.
All right. Well, did you wear your rain boots? I hope so.
Oh yeah.
But David is here with us as well. Each week we meet here to talk Raiders football, but we want you to be the third host. That's right, Las Vegas and the world. Sound off. Raider Nation, call now at 702-889-5978 and tell us what you think. Don't be diffident. It's the word of the day, diffident, which means hesitant.
Yeah, I got you.
So don't hesitate. Call us at 702-889-5978. Reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on the KillerRadio.com app. So if you're not in Las Vegas or if you want to tell somebody to listen and they're not in Las Vegas, you can do that. Also, you can watch us live on YouTube. That's right. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and never miss a show and some cool other video content we have coming soon. Also, you can watch us on Facebook Live and the Sports Radio 1140 AM Twitter handle. As always, check out our website, silverandblacktoday.com. We are a news site dedicated to the Raiders with the Las Vegas twist, so make sure you check out that as well. We also, of course, every show we have as part of our show our weekly correspondent, and that is our cousin Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic. He'll be here. He'll give us 2 cents, guys, on the Raiders' current situation and what he's hearing from coaches, executives, and players around the league about the current state of the Silver and Black. We'll also give Vinny the question, could Derek Carr be on the trading block? Dum, dum, dum. We'll talk about that. Bonsignore will also talk to us about the emerging greatness that is Todd Gurley. So we always like to talk a little bit of general NFL with Vinny as well, and we will do that too. So we'll finish up that first hour, and we'll go out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, this time via Skype. SilverandBlackToday.com senior NFL writer Hayden Nadolny will join us from Melbourne, Australia, to talk about the Raiders' woeful start. He's got some interesting perspective, and we'll do that. In the second hour, we'll go in-depth on Derek Carr and ask the question, is he long for the Raiders' world? And we'll finish up the show with Matt's Audible, where Matt picks a topic at large, and we'll discuss, debate, argue, whatever happens when Matt goes under center and calls the audible. There you have it, Raider Nation. You're up to date. We've set the topics on the table for you. Now it's your time to chime in. Call us here on Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio at 702-889-5978. Now, guys, this week, with the current state of the Raiders, we had a press conference with Jon Gruden, and one of the questions, and I want to play some sound for you guys now, one of the questions for Jon Gruden was, Coach, do you have regrets? And here's what he had to say.
I got a list of things I regret. I got a list of things. I'm sure you do too. Unless you're perfect. I mean, I don't know. I don't think any of us are perfect. We're trying. We're working hard. I'm not going to never throw the ball in first and goal again. All my friends in the league do it. I don't really think it's living dangerously either, but when it's intercepted and it's ugly like it was, it's going to be magnified, and you just got to continue to go with your gut feeling, go with your preparation, be true to your gut, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. There are going to be some mistakes, and I'll take responsibility for all of them.
Coach Gruden.
All my friends do it. Why does he sound like he just got in trouble from one of his parents? All my friends do it. What the hell kind of answer is that?
I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I can't believe an NFL head coach just said that.
Come on.
All my friends do it.
Oh, my God.
Junior, were you vaping?
All my friends
are doing it. So anyway, yeah. So it was interesting there.
That's the dumbest
All his
answer he
friends,
could have
Pete
given.
Carroll. His friend, one friend, Pete Carroll.
Nice one, David. I agree with that. But here's the question, guys. So he says, regret. The thing with Gruden is, and everybody loves his edge. I'm not, everybody loves the Chucky side of him, right?
Where is that?
Well, good question. We're going to get to that in a second. But when you listen to this sound and you hear him say, yeah, I got regrets, don't you? Are you perfect? It's like, dude, are you feeling a little bit of the pressure?
Yeah, I'm not coaching the Raiders, man.
Yeah,
don't worry about my regrets. I'm not coaching the Raiders.
And I'm not making $10 million a year, right?
Heard that.
So everybody's got regrets, yes, but I think that it was an aggressive non-answer for the most part. And you can tell the criticisms over the first and goal where they threw the interception instead of running Marshawn Lynch a couple of games ago. You can see where that is still bothering him.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. That's a horrible decision, and he's made that decision more than once already this season, and it has yet to pay off.
Right.
I feel like that play in particular is going to be like the highlight of the Raiders season. Like that is this season summed up.
That's not saying much.
That is this season summed up.
It is. It absolutely is. It's a microcosm of the disaster this season has become.
Well, and so it's interesting though, because part of what they keep asking Jon Gruden about, of course, is not only the team overall and the record, but also about Derek Carr. And so there were a couple players that Coach Gruden talked about. One of them was Derek Carr, and here's what he had to say.
Look, the results, they need to improve. I know that, but he's the strength of this football team. And we're going to get him to play better. He's on my watch. I said it when I got here. If he doesn't play well, I failed. This guy's a good player that can be great. And we got to protect him better so we can really see what he can do. We got to protect him better, obviously. And if we do that, I think he'll showcase some of the things you saw earlier in the year. He was 29 for 32 at Denver, threw for 450 yards, come back to beat Cleveland. There's a lot to work with there. I'm excited about it.
He's excited about it. What do you say? I mean, so he doesn't really address any of the issues with Derek Carr. He just says, look, he's our guy. He's right part of the reason I came here, but he also said that about Cleo Mack, so I don't know how much that means.
Yeah, you can't take that at face value anymore because, like you just said, he traded away one of your biggest building blocks, in my opinion. The problem with Carr is he doesn't look comfortable in this offense, and he doesn't look like he's willing to stand in there and take a hit. The ball is coming out. I get that their offensive line has problems, but you have to be willing to make a play. He's not trying to make plays. He's just trying to get rid of the ball. There's a difference there. You can beat pressure in a lot of different ways. You can slide protection. You can roll pocket. You can chip block. You can run quick slants. You can do things that help beat pressure, take pressure off of that offensive line without just getting the ball and throwing it to a running back for 0 yards every single time. That's not going to get it done because what's the defense going to do? They're just going to sit up on the line of scrimmage and take everything away from you.
Well, David, what do you think here? I mean, do you think, and we're going to go in depth later, by the way, in hour number 2, completely on Derek Carr. So we'll hold some of the conversation, but what Gruden had to say about Carr, what do you see from what he said?
Man, I feel like bummed out hearing this from Gruden because it's far from the Gruden, the more energetic, charismatic guy, I guess you could say that I grew up with when he was coaching Oakland. I mean, I don't hear much confidence from him. I don't hear much faith. I mean, I feel like him dancing around these questions a little bit is a little telling of how he really feels about this season.
I would agree with that 100%, and I think that's the issue is there's not a lot of confidence there. You can see it. He doesn't have a lot of confidence in his players. He doesn't have a lot of confidence in what they're doing, and he owns that. There's no question, but certainly not. I mean, they're just not anywhere anyone wants them to be, and so from a complete standpoint, things are not great. Now, the other thing was this week, with a couple minutes we have left here before the first break, Rashawn Melvin, who was a big free agent signing for Jon Gruden in the offseason, tweeted out his frustration, which was very open, and you have to say honest, whether it was purposeful or not, we'll see. But here's what Gruden had to say about Melvin complaining on Twitter.
I haven't talked to him yet, no. I'm sure I will. I know Paul Gunther did. I heard there was a Twitter report out there. Melvin's on his 7th team, I think. He's had different techniques. Maybe he's confused. I don't know. I'll talk to him. But he's got to play better. He's in a competitive situation. Perhaps he's frustrated, and I can't blame him.
So he's on his 7th team. That's, to me, is a slight at the player. So now you're starting to see a little bit of open frustrations among coaches and players, right? I mean, is there any other way to read how he said it?
No, he's throwing his player under the bus right now. His player's not playing well, and basically his player is saying, you're putting me in a position to fail because this isn't what I'm good at. And Gruden's saying, essentially, well, you just need to get on board and get better. Maybe you just don't understand things yet. That right there speaks to a lack of communication, in my opinion. And it goes back, I hate to keep bringing up the Mac thing. I'm sick and tired of the Mac thing, honestly. But there were so many reports about there being no communication between Gruden and Mac. And you have Mac's camp saying, had Gruden just contacted us and talked, we would be here. And then, you have Gruden's camp saying, well, we did talk to him. And there's so much disconnect there that now it's starting to feel like Gruden is just on an island doing what Gruden wants to do, and everybody else just has to fall in line.
Yeah, that seems to be where he's going with that. At the same time, the question, he came out this week too and said, look, this team's not tanking, right? Purposely tanking like you see in the NBA, because the NBA stinks in my opinion. But nonetheless, we're going to address that too. We have a bunch more sound we're going to get to after the next segment because I want to go through that. We had a lot of comments and discussion around the Raiders tanking and maybe thinking about a draft pick versus the rest of the year, including a lot of national sound. So a lot of the experts and prognosticators around the country in sports have been talking about it. So we're gonna look at that as well and talk about that because I think that's, you have to ask the question on what is happening, what's going on, what is the Raiders' play here, not only from Jon Gruden's perspective and from the players' perspective, but also the organization. What is Mark Davis thinking? What is Mark Bedane thinking? What are those guys thinking? So we're going to talk about that. Now, when we come back after this break, we're going to be talking to Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles. We'll ask him what he's hearing on the national level. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio. Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the Law Office of Michael A. Troiano.
Hi, this is Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to the Silver and Black today.
Indeed, you are. We are your therapy session for today, Raider Nation.
Hey, Scott, before we continue, I just want to give a shout-out to you for wearing that jersey, that Chiefs jersey, and a shout-out to Slapshot in general, because that's such a good movie, and I feel like anyone who hasn't seen it should definitely see it, Matt.
Wait a minute. We're going to hold that one because we got a guest coming on. Matt's not amused, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, we are now going to go out on our attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line and bring in, of course, our weekly contributor, and that's Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles. How you doing, Vinny?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good. No snow to you for today, right?
No, it's a beautiful day up here in the Bay Area. I'm up early watching obviously the Chargers are playing the Titans right now. Of interest to, I'm sure, everybody, your listeners and everything like that, and the AFC West, and the Rams having beaten the Chargers. Chargers are looking pretty good, but Titans are making a little comeback too.
They are looking pretty good, and they might be playing today in their future home stadium, but we'll talk about that later. Now, the Raiders. Okay, we're going to start off because you have such a great perspective for us with your national contacts around the league. The Raiders, do people in the league, when you talk to folks, executives, coaches, players, do people look at the Raiders right now as a laughingstock and Jon Gruden failing, or do they look at it and really see a purposeful transition and something that they're doing there?
I think that they're looking at a team and a coach that probably understand where they are better than anyone else understands where they are from a roster standpoint. And from what needs to be done, what needs to be changed from a culture to a talent standpoint. And when you're in that kind of a situation, things are on the table as they should be. You have to continually look for ways to get better and which approach works. I was talking to a general manager this week, and he was telling me, look, people would be shocked. Like he said shocked like 8 times of who actually gets shocked.
Oh, we lost you there, Vinny.
But the amount of dialogue that goes on between teams, just gauging other teams' interest, all the names and all the various names that get talked about, fans would be shocked. That doesn't mean that they all come to. But every option is being considered by everybody, and the Raiders, more so than anyone else. One thing is Jon Gruden came to they've had one winning season, and how long? 12 years, 13. You would know better than I would on that, but it's been a long time. It was a long time between winning seasons. So it's not like he's coming to a situation where they're on the top of the mountain and he's just deciding, you know what, out of my ego, I'm going to tear it all down and rebuild it in my vision. He's coming to a situation that there wasn't anything going on there. They had a good year 2 years ago. And just catching things at the right time. But this isn't a complete teardown of a championship caliber team. So, and I think other teams realize that.
I don't, Vinny, I don't know if that's a complete rebuild was absolutely necessary. They haven't had a ton of success, but the year they went 12-4, what you saw there were pieces that you could build around. It wasn't a polished product. You saw with an offensive coordinator change the following season and some locker room dysfunction, how things went down a little bit. But there were building blocks there. There were pieces where you could say, okay, we add a few here and add a few there, and this can be a good team. And it looks like Gruden said, you know what, I don't want any of those pieces. I'm getting rid of everything, and I'm going to start from the very beginning. I don't know that a complete rebuild was absolutely necessary, especially when you consider he just got there.
Well, I think that timing plays a factor in this. He didn't get there when Khalil Mack was in the second year of his contract or the first year of his contract. And yet, I would agree with you on that he was a building block to build around. He got here when all of a sudden he's going to become the highest paid defensive player in the game. at $4 million or so. That's a lot to swallow for a defensive player on a team that had issues all over the roster, holes all over the roster. So it was. I mean, we have to look at things in perspective. It wasn't that he said, "I'm going to just trade Khalil Mack because he's not my guy." He traded Khalil Mack because he was getting ready to be paid more money than any defensive player of all time, and there were holes all over the roster.
Well,
so
on that, Vinny, let me ask you real quick. Had Mack showed up for camp, reported to camp, and said, "Yeah, I'm going to play here," does Gruden still trade him? Because I think it was all based on the fact that Mack never showed up.
Well, are you saying that he was going to play the last year of his contract and not hold out, which was that's unrealistic? But I guess the question is, okay, would they have traded him under what circumstances? Still having to pay him or pay him what he was making in the last year of his contract?
Yeah, had he shown up and shown Gruden that, yes, I want to be part of this team. Of course, I still want to be paid, but I want to be part of this team. Here I am for you, new coach, leader of this defense. I'm going to be here. Do you still think that Gruden would have said, yeah, but you know what? You're going to want too much money anyway, so we're not going to keep you?
I'd like to say yes, okay, but even that has some nuance to it. Is he coming to play in the last year of their contract, and then we're going to sit down at the end of the year and negotiate something more long term, or because it's unrealistic. You can't. It's like not apples to oranges, but it's like you're drawing up a scenario that I don't think that was realistic at all. He was going to hold out till he got paid, just like Aaron Donald was, as well. So. Kind of, I don't know. I would think that, yeah, if he came under those circumstances, he'd still be on the Raiders because they would probably be either working toward a new contract or working to get to the end of the season, and then we'll see what happens after that. You still have the franchise tag that's in play for a couple of years, so there were a lot of options left for the Raiders right there.
So, Vinny, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles. We're talking about the current state of the Raiders. Now, we're hearing that the Raiders are entertaining trade offers for lots of guys. And like you said, that actually happens more than people think, even with teams that are doing well. Now, one of the interesting stories that was floated this week was about Derek Carr's future and the fact that Carr could be on the trading block, especially as it relates to the Giants who are having turmoil and don't show regret for keeping Eli Manning and his declining skills, but certainly it's showing on the field. What are you hearing out there about the seriousness of perhaps Derek Carr either being moved this year or perhaps in the offseason?
I think that we've had at all options. I think the speculation of him and the Giants, I think that's just throwing darts up on the board and wondering if they're going to stick. So I don't think that specifically is something that is a for sure thing that's going to happen. Would the Raiders ever entertain trading Derek Carr? It would have to be a really good deal, and it would have to be where they're in position. Maybe they have the top pick in the draft, and they're looking at the Oregon quarterback, or they know that there's a certainty that they're going to end up with the guy that they want to replace him. Short of that, that would be a really difficult trade to make. If you don't have a viable option to replace him immediately in line, then I don't see that they're going to trade or they're in any rush to trade Derek Carr.
So, so it's interesting. I mean, there's going to be, I think the Raiders will continue, and Jon Gruden said, right, during his press conference this week, during the bye week, that they're going to continue to make changes on the roster, and that's what happens. I mean, when you're 1-5 and things don't look real positive, you got to look for answers somehow. So we'll do that. Now, the other thing, we keep it in the AFC West, and like you said, the Chargers doing pretty well in London. They lead 17-13 with 5:02 left in the third over across the pond. The Chargers were again in the news. The NFL has said to have concerns over the viability of the team in Los Angeles, and you've covered this issue over the years, including the Chargers relocation and the Raiders relocation. How real is that, do you think? And what do the Chargers do? I mean, isn't this a situation, Vinny, where, in my view, just looking at it from the outside, the NFL, I think, owns this. They own this, and if they're going to do something to help, they really need to help the Chargers. As much as San Diego hates the Spanos family and all that stuff, if you look at it, in my view, it's not their problem. It's actually the NFL who allowed it to happen and thought that they could do two teams in Los Angeles.
Well, and I agree with you. I think that it's interesting to me, some of this, hand-wringing that's going on when there was an opportunity for the NFL right up until the day that the Chargers announced that they were going to move, January 11th, 2017. We were all in New York. The Stadium Finance Committee was meeting, and they were meeting to talk about, hey, are there some creative ways that we can help the Chargers remain in San Diego? There's obstacles in the state of California and cities throughout California that don't exist in other states and in other NFL markets. And I don't think there was a lack of an appreciation for that fundamental dynamic that the Chargers and the Raiders and the Rams before them and the Raiders in LA, all of those teams had to deal with. But when it came right down to it, they said, no, everyone plays by the same rules. Everyone gets the same G4 money. We're all in this, we all play by the same rules. And on that day, January 11th, when the owners came out and said, nope, there's not going to be anything different for San Diego, a few hours later, Dean Spanos said, I'm moving to Los Angeles, because at that point, he felt like he was between a rock and a hard place. If I stay in San Diego with no guarantees of a stadium solution, I could lose that option in Los Angeles, which was, had a timing mechanism to it. So to me, the NFL has a lot to do with this, and it's fascinating to me that they're now sitting there going, oh my gosh, the Chargers are, not doing as well as we thought that they were going to do, in Los Angeles, when all those numbers, all those facts, all of those concerns were there.
Yeah, they were there.
When they had a chance to do something about it.
And, Vinny, we've run out of time, buddy. I want to thank you again. We've talked to Vinny Bonsignore. Should be interesting to watch that as it unfolds. Vinny Bonsignore of The Athletic Los Angeles has been our guest, as he is every week on the Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. We're going to step aside here for a break. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about the Raiders situation and what they're going to do with this roster. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Great. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 a.m. And it is a bye week, but as you can tell from the tone of the show, we're doing therapy today for Raider Nation. And joining us now on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line all the way from Australia is our senior NFL writer and columnist, Hayden Nadolny. Hayden, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's a nice sunny day in Melbourne.
All right. Well, we finally are having our fall weather, so it was 80 degrees, and we're enjoying that. But what's not enjoyable, Hayden, and I know from your column, of course, Hayden writes Any Given Monday, which is a column, one of our most popular features on the silverandblacktoday.com, his weekly column on the Raiders and other things as well, but mostly on the Raiders. Now, Hayden, you did not mince words after last week's loss in London to the Seahawks and calling the game an absolute embarrassment for the Raiders. Now, the Raiders have had a lot of lowlights over the last 15-plus years. Where do you rank where the team is now based on how the excitement had built up with Jon Gruden returning?
Well, I don't want to say it's at 2006 levels with Art Shell as the head coach, but it wouldn't be far off from that given the hype that came into this season.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everybody's disappointed, and I think it depends on how long you've followed the Raiders and a little bit of the fandom section there too, because for a lot of us, and especially for the folks in Las Vegas who are listening to this show, clearly many of them are either Raider fans for a long time and they've been through that pain, or they're new fans, or they're burgeoning fans and they're getting ready to welcome the team here in 2020. But when you look at the excitement, Hayden, coming into this year, Jon Gruden coming off the year that we saw under Jack Del Rio last year, which did not meet anyone's expectations, people were excited. Were they perhaps too excited and their expectations too high?
Initially, I think many people had expected Gruden to come in and just to absolutely dominate from the get-go, and I think that was a little bit unrealistic. That being said, there's no reason why the Raiders shouldn't have been competitive in at least like the majority of their games, and they should have gotten anywhere between 7 and 9 wins would have been considered a step in the right direction. And that's what I think most rational heads were thinking. And given the play so far, it's been majorly underwhelming.
No doubt about that, and I think everybody, especially, you wrote in your column Any Given Monday on silverandblacktoday.com, you wrote about the fact that early on you saw what you felt was Gruden recognizing what was happening and kind of, while not tanking it, as he said, that, he said they're not tanking anything in his press conference, but nonetheless, you sort of saw kind of the writing on the wall early in the game, and you saw kind of the game plan change, didn't you, early?
Oh, it was obvious. As soon as Jon Feliciano went down, the left guard, they're on their third string left guard. They've got Colton Miller playing on one knee. Brandon Parker's a rookie. So it was an absolute shambles of an offensive line, and they were just trying to get out of the game healthy. But even so, it wasn't good enough. You can't blame the offensive line on the defense giving up I think it was a 13 or 14 play opening touchdown drive in which they ran the ball something like a dozen times right down the defense's throat. It was a disaster.
Yeah, that opening drive, I mean, that's the feeling we had here and watching the game here at the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios. And then, you get to that point where you start to think about, and there's a lot of questioning going on, right, Hayden? There's not only questioning about the organization overall, but of Jon Gruden. Now, the media and kind of naysayers overall were negative about Gruden, I think, from the beginning, right? They said, listen, the game has passed him by. And you and I have talked about this on the podcast, which we do usually weekly. And it seems as though those folks, in some ways, at least temporarily, are being proven right. But the approach that Gruden took, and you write about in your column this week, was about the fact that he brought in all these veterans, and the veterans were supposed to show these rookies and these younger players kind of what a competitive environment was like, what it's like to win. That has not gone according to plan.
Oh, it hasn't gone to plan at all. The simple reality is that this team is 1-5 right now, and if you were a betting man, how many more games do you really think they could win? Maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most on a good week. This team's a laughingstock of the league, and in a way, the Raiders have been a laughingstock of the league for the last 15 years, but it's only now that they've had a national identity as their head coach that things are really coming to the surface. And as much as I hate to say it, it might actually be a long-term good that they're being exposed in terms of how the organization is from top down as such a rabble, because the exposure means that they're going to have to get their act together, and they're going to have to get it together quickly.
Just a reminder, we're talking to Hayden Nadolny. He is the senior NFL writer and columnist at silverandblacktoday.com. Now, Hayden, you talked about in your column, too, about the fact that, for example, the defense, they're going to go a lot younger, yet we see some contradictions there, right? We see Daryl Worley coming off the suspension list. Now, Daryl Worley, let's say, is in his early 20s. He's not an older veteran, but you see a Garyon Conley losing snaps to the veteran. So when you say they're going to go a lot younger, you see some actions that don't necessarily point to that. What do you make of that whole Garyon Conley situation and what's happening with him?
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. He should be on the field. There is no reason why a first-round pick from just 12 months ago shouldn't be on the field. He's going to make mistakes, but look at all the other players that are making mistakes as well. And to isolate the young guy, Conley's 23 years old, so is Daryl Worley. They should be the 2 starters. They should be the 2 guys on the outside. You can rotate Leon Hall at safety, move him up. You can put Nick Nelson in the slot there. You've got 3 young corners. You can find out exactly what you got in those 3 guys the rest of the season, And then the safeties, you've got Reggie Nelson. He's not doing anything right now. They're already starting to phase him out. So they're bringing in Eric Harris. He's only 25 years old, I think, so I like him. But then you've got Marcus Gilchrist, who, as much as Paul Gunther thinks he's a smart guy and student of the game and whatnot, he's not doing it either. He's not showing up either. So you really could rotate the three safeties between Leon Hall, who's had time at safety. You've got Eric Harris, who's a young guy, and then you can also play Gilchrist if you really want like a vet that knows the system, I guess. But realistically, the youth movement needs to start right now. They can't wait any longer because over time, as the weeks go on, the veterans, you're gonna see them drop off, and their play is just gonna wilt because they're gonna be focusing on keeping their body healthy, and they're gonna understand that it's a business. And next season, they most likely won't be there, so they need to preserve their body, and they're not going to be putting their body on the line when it's counted.
Well, and we saw one of the veterans, linebacker Derek Johnson, that Gruden and company brought in get released this week, and of course they activated Jason Cabinda off the practice squad, so they're going younger there, obviously. But how much of this is on Gruden, Hayden? I mean, Gruden brought in all these veterans, as you talk about, but even with the rookies, you have Conley, that case. Is this a case of Jon Gruden not wanting to go with guys that aren't quote unquote his?
I'm really not sure. Because, Derek Carr wasn't Gruden's guy. Gruden really has about 20 or 30 guys on the roster that he's brought in. But realistically, there's still a bunch of guys that are still heavily connected to Reggie McKenzie and that regime. And the majority of the guys that Reggie McKenzie brought in, such as Kelechi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, those cornerstone guys were in large part the reason that Gruden came here in the first place. So to come here and then suddenly blow it up when you said that they were the reason for you coming here in the first place is extremely contradictory. But as we know, Jon Gruden shoots from the hip, and it's a matter of on any given day, he can say one thing and completely do something the next. So it's a wild ride.
Well, and also, I mean, there has to be a lot to said, and we've been talking about it on the show today and through the podcast and obviously through the website, is the fact that things look a certain way from the outside, but when you get inside as the coach and you're in the organization and you're working with players on a daily basis, I should say, things can quickly change. Now, one of the biggest issues that you also highlighted in your column, in your 3rd and 7 feature there around 3 predictions, one was about the offensive line. Now, the offensive line, I think unfairly, I'm not saying that Derek Carr doesn't need to do things to improve. No doubt about it. He's shown that throughout the course of this year. At the same time, I watched extensively, Hayden, a lot of film of the Seattle game and the offensive line, especially after the first drive. And Gruden went to an offense because the offensive line was not keeping pressure away from Derek Carr. They had to go to very short passes, a lot of out routes, a lot of cross patterns to get the ball out of his hands very quickly because he wasn't getting anything up front. Do you agree with me, or do you disagree that really this isn't as much a Derek Carr problem? Is it the fact that the offensive line and the patchwork that they put there, along with all the injuries, is really creating the issues we're seeing on offense?
Oh, it's completely the offensive line. I look at Derek Carr's performance against the Seahawks, and even though he got sacked 6 times, he barely threw the ball past 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. I actually ranked it as one of his better games of the season because he was able to get out of there, one, healthy, but he was able to, at times, he was using his legs far more than he had. He was escaping the pocket. He was still trying to keep his eyes downfield. It was just a case of the offensive line wasn't protecting him. And had he been the Derek Carr of a few years ago that was a statue in the pocket and did not move at all, he would have given up at least 10 sacks on the weekend. It was that bad.
Well, and one of the other issues, too, and we saw he was obviously injured early in the game in London, and that was Amari Cooper. But you write that there's clearly a disconnect between Carr and Cooper. Talk a little bit about that, and then tell me, does Amari Cooper finish the season? We've heard the trade rumors this week. Does he finish the season as an Oakland Raider?
Well, if you look at who Derek Carr likes to throw to when it comes to the crunch in the end zone, in the red zone, when it comes to key third down plays, how often do you see Amari Cooper being thrown the tough ball?
Good point.
It's not often. He doesn't throw it to him often. He gets good numbers between the 20s, but when it comes to really that key moment on third down and the big play, Amari Cooper seems to, for whatever reason, he's not the number one read. And I'm not really quite sure. You can say that, oh, look, it's a coaching thing, but the fact of the matter is he's had 3 different offensive coordinators now. He's had Bill Musgrave, we've had Todd Downing, the Raiders have also had now Greg Olsen or Jon Gruden. And on all 3 occasions, you've got Amari Cooper not producing in that same situation. And I really do believe that that's a case of Derek Carr not having the same connection with Amari Cooper as he does some of the other receivers on the roster. We saw that Michael Crabtree was always Derek Carr's go-to guy, no matter what. He was always the number one target. When they needed a big play, he was the guy. And for the most part, Crabtree was able to convert. And this season we're seeing Carr's going quite a bit he's going to Jordy Nelson. He's also going to Jared Cook quite a lot. Cook has become the number one target. And in a way, that's also a little bit by design because of the lack of 7-step drops, the lack of deep passes that the Raiders have been throwing because of the poor offensive line play.
Right.
It's meant that they've had to get the ball out a bit quicker.
Well, and Hayden, I mean, clearly there's no question that there's a disconnect there. Now, in the few seconds we have left with you, is Amari Cooper a Raider at the end of the season?
Look, if they can get a first-round pick for him, he won't be. But I think that they'll keep him on the roster for the rest of the year. And then come the 5th-year option, he's got the same agent as Khalil Mack. It's Joel Segal. So anything's possible in 12 months' time.
All right. That has been, and Hayden, thanks for joining us, Hayden Nadolny, our senior NFL writer and columnist at silverandblacktoday.com. We're going to step aside, pay some bills. We'll be back here. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right, and we are back. We are here to provide therapy for you guys. I
don't know if we got that kind of time.
Well, it is the bye week, so it's impossible for the Raiders to lose this week, at least.
That is true, gentlemen. And, we're just getting it out in the open. Of course, we can take your calls. If you have something to say, if you want to bother Matt about the fact that he's never seen the movie Slapshot, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, I'm wearing my Charlestown Chiefs jersey.
I got my Michigan jersey, go Blue, beat Michigan State. That was my big play. Everyone at VSiN had...
Trent, turn off his mic, please.
Everybody at VSiN had Michigan State +7. That was my big play, Michigan -7.
Look,
that's
man,
all. So I'm happy.
The only hockey gear I'm wearing is Golden Knights, but I'm throwing on Dodgers gear today because...
Oh, God.
Going back to the World Series, bro. Going back to the World Series.
Against the Chowder Heads. All right, so...
That Fenway pack.
We're here. The three of us are going to talk through... Oh, but you can call in 702-889-5978. Tell us what's on your... get it off your chest. Tell us what's bothering you about the Raiders. Should they trade Derek Carr? Should they trade Amari Cooper? Should they trade Jon Gruden again? We don't know. But anyway, listen, so... One of the things that Gruden brought up this week, guys, was the fact that there's some comments out there about the team tanking, to which Jon Gruden took exception with. And so I'm going to play you some cuts now. And the first two I'm going to play, Jason Whitlock on Fox TV, courtesy of Fox TV, and also Doug Gottlieb. They were on the same show. I'm going to play Whitlock thinking that, yes, they're tanking, and then Gottlieb arguing the opposite. And actually, Gottlieb's point, I'm going to just set this up. I agree more with his point and where he's going with it. But here's Jason Whitlock first on the Raiders tanking.
I think they're tanking, and I think it's an organizational decision. It's not just Jon Gruden. I think the Davis family isn't all in on football right now. It's about getting to Las Vegas where they'll have more money to spend, and they'll have that $2 billion stadium to generate revenue. I think it's a mistake to tank, though. In the NFL, there is no process. There is no Philadelphia Sixers way to tanking your way to a championship. This is a mistake.
All right. Now, Doug Gottlieb.
This is Chapter 7, not Chapter 11, right? You're reorganizing. And I disagree with you. I think Jon Gruden sat out for 10 years and did decide, hey, if I want to do it, if I'm really going to do it, really going to get back in, and there were other opportunities, I want to do it so it's sustainable for the future, right? That's what Chapter 7 is for businesses across the country. They get to reorganize, and they get to cut personnel and cut entitlements that they never really wanted, so they build it for a long-term and sustainable future. That's what he wants. The Raiders made the playoffs 2 years ago, but as he's pointed out and other people point out, they weren't very good. They went for it on fourth down. They had some miracle finishes. And the truth is, I think he thought he could build around Derek Carr and be decent for now. And I believe that the truth is, he thinks even Derek Carr can be replaced. And at the end of the season, you go to next year, you can get rid of Derek Carr, and it's only, I think, $7.5 million in cap money.
Again, that sound from both Jason Whitlock and Doug Gottlieb, courtesy of Fox Sports 1. Now, gentlemen, we have just a few seconds before we got to take a break, but we want to ruminate on this a little bit and come back and talk about it. But I think they both bring up good questions, and we'll save this for after the break. Number one is the organization looking forward and not looking at now? And then secondarily, Doug Gottlieb, what he said about it being Chapter 7, basically, look, you're kind of reorganizing now so that you can be ready for later, and that includes anybody on the table. But we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that, and I'm sure we'll have some lively discussions when we do, including Derek Carr and his future with the Raiders, okay? So make sure you stick around. We'll be back after the top of the hour sports break. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The PG coming your way at 4 exclusively on the radio.com app. Search CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
All right, we're back. Silver and Black today. The doctors are in, and our first patient of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we go out on the phones, and we welcome in our caller, Mike. Mike, what's going on? What do you need to tell the doctors? You're sitting on the virtual couch. We're here to help.
Right on. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
Right on. I guess a couple things. So, there's a lot. I was in the YouTube box, and I had said we got to stay the course, and someone was saying, like, what am I thinking? And I know a lot of guys would be against me on kind of that, but if we look at, last 15 years, and even in 32 years, we've had 7 winning seasons in 32 years. That means 1 winning season every 4 to 5 years. All these coaches have came in, and every one of them have tried to change the culture. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think to a certain degree, yes. No, every coach who comes in, and you guys jump in, every coach who comes in brings their own stamp and style and what they do. But I think culture is bigger, Mike. I think culture is not just coaching. Culture is also organizational, so up through the upper office.
Yeah, I completely agree. But, I think the Raiders are different than any other team. I've lived all over the place, from Montana to Texas to Colorado, and they've always been the most hated team. You'll find some Raider fans here and there, but, if we go back to not to get in conspiracy stuff, but there's truth and reality within it. If we look at the Raiders and Al Davis and the AFL and all the animosity, all the lawsuits just over and over, there's always something lingering with our team, bad calls or unfair calls by the refs. It makes coaching the Raiders really hard. Here's how I look at it. If you go back to the Patriot game and the Tuck Rule game, and you can see the look in the players' eyes and how just the wind got taken out of their sail, and then every year since that point, when a bad call happens, whether it's a referee pulling the card out of nowhere and whatnot, or whatever it might be, it's the same look with just different players, and I won't get too focused on that. But the point is as a leader, you can't change the culture. All you can do is embrace it, because you're not going to change the refs. You're not going to change other fans. You're not going to change the media. All you can do is embrace it. So in my opinion, for that reason, if maybe Jon Gruden isn't the best play caller anymore, but if we look at like how things came about, I mean, I think that Jon Gruden does bring that. Everybody's worried that he can't coach a modern player, but what did he do when players first came to the team? He made them do essentially a Raider history, and to me, that's the most important thing. You have to understand what it means to be a true Raider, because it's different than, you can't be a coach like Bill Belichick and be quiet on the sideline. If a ref's going to make a bad call.
I think in terms of, you're talking about refereeing and things like that, oftentimes perception becomes reality, right? And the perception for the Raiders has always been they're a dirty team. And you go back to the Al Davis days and his controversy with the NFL and the lawsuit and all of that tied into on-the-field play, and referees are now just they're not. I don't think it's biased. They're just groomed into this perception that the Raiders are going to be the dirtier, more penalty-prone team, and that's just what it's become over time. When the Raiders have had success, it's because they've been talented enough to overcome that. I mean, they won games 2 years ago in 2016 where they still had 10-plus penalties for 100-plus yards, but they were the more talented team on the field, so they were able to overcome those obstacles.
Well, and the other thing I would say, Mike, is two things. One is, again, when you're talking about culture, I don't think what we're talking about, or what some folks are talking about, is changing the Raider Nation culture or the culture of winning and the commitment to excellence type stuff that we know the organization for, and that includes rough football. That includes the tough guy mentality stuff. When we talk to Phil Villapiano and those guys from the heyday in the 70s and into the 80s, I don't think it's that. I think it's over the last 15 years with the lack of consistency in coaching, the lack of consistency in player acquisition. All of that stuff has led to the issues the franchise has had. Now, those issues, in my view, and the people up in Oakland, sorry to say it, and I appreciate you, but the reason they're there is because they have not been able to grow. They have not been able to grow revenue. They have not been able to grow the organization. Moving to Las Vegas is going to help that. So I think that's all part of it. I think you're seeing right now more growing pains. And Mike, I want to thank you for calling in, man. Appreciate you listening.
Can I say?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. No, I agree with you guise completely, and that's the ownership. And we are one of the most poorest teams in the NFL. But I was in the Army. I'm an Army vet, combat vet. I've seen good leadership, bad leadership. I got 10 plus years in management, and each business, no matter what line of profession you do, there's always going to be issues and problems within a organization or a business. And football's, obviously at a higher scale and whatnot. But the equations are kind of the same. That when you have, whether it's someone that's bad in the locker room, if they won't change, you know what I mean, and buy into your system, they can be like a cancer to the team. And bad leaders is what they do, in my opinion. It's more dictator leadership is where you go in and you just keep putting Band-Aids on stuff and you keep having the same problems over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Where good leadership, you kind of have, it's I call it the spider web effect, but you kind of have to resolve issues from the bottom, work your way back, and they're not fixed overnight. It can take 3 to 6 months to fix those problems, And I think John came in, and I think he did want to sign Mac. I think that's why we were kind of, cautious on who we signed and how much money we spent, because we were trying to sign Mac. It didn't work out. And, from one thing to another, it's just been this dark cloud, lingering over our head. And, I agree to some point, with a lot of fans, where they're we're preparing for Vegas. Well, you have investors investing billions of dollars into a team to get a stadium, millions and billions. They're not going to want a team that's just terrible or whatever. But it doesn't mean that Jon Gruden can't coach. Is he going to have some cobwebs to dust off and, some play calling he needs to adjust and whatnot? Yeah, absolutely. But if you go into a system and you realize, hey, these players, aren't the players that, I thought they were going to be, and they're not producing, we have a lot more work to do than I thought that we did going into it.
Right.
Well, then, yeah, you're... it's just, I don't know. To me, it's it's all situational circumstances, and you have to keep things in context. If any person, no matter their skill level in evaluating, okay, I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means, but if they take something out of context and they only look at it in one little, retrospect, point of view instead of like, hey, like there's a story to this whole thing, then, he's making $10 million a year. We should be doing better, so maybe cut his pay in half for the year. I don't know.
Well, Mike, Mike, hey, dude, thank you for your service, number one, to our country. And thank you for calling in. We appreciate that. So here's the thing. I don't disagree with you at all on the leadership thing. I think that the Raiders are in a weird situation. Has Jon Gruden done everything correctly? No. In fact, I agree with what Doug Gottlieb said, guys, where he talked about how this is Chapter 7. This is a reorganization. Now, they weren't necessarily truthful at the beginning of the season, but they couldn't be. What are you going to say to Oakland? Hey, guys, we're rebuilding. Sorry, we're not going to be very good for 2 years?
Again, and like I talked about with Vinny earlier, I don't know that a complete rebuild was necessary right now because you had building blocks there. If you want to
wait a minute.
team,
what building blocks?
What building blocks? Well, let's start with Coop, Carr, and Mack right off the bat.
Okay, so Mack's gone.
Let's go back to the beginning where you started this whole thing.
Right.
You had pieces there to build around. It's not like this team didn't compete.
Right.
In Carr's third season, they went 7-9. That was a good football team that was getting better. You could see the pieces there. They lost a few games that season where they could have easily been a 9-win team, 9 or 10-win team that year. That was a football team that you could see was building something. The 12-4 year, everybody keeps talking about luck. Well, all these things broke their way. Well, that's what happens in football. Good teams find a way to win those games. Good teams go for it on fourth down and make that play to win the game.
Yeah,
that's not luck.
Wait
that's
a minute,
a good football team finding a way to win.
Would you say, though, that on any given year in the NFL, there's pretty good parity, correct? Because we see teams go from 6-10 to 9-7.
Right.
So that year, if you go back to 16, I'm not saying they were. I mean, everybody's got luck. You're right. Luck plays into everybody's season. Doesn't matter if you're 12-4, 14-1. Doesn't matter. So, but the point is that things went their way.
But bad teams don't luck into 12 wins. I'm sorry, that just doesn't happen. A bad football team doesn't get lucky and win 12 games.
I don't think anybody thinks that they're a bad football team.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of it was just a lucky
I disagree
season.
with that.
Here's my point on the rebuild, Scott. What was Reggie McKenzie doing from the time he got to Oakland?
Yeah.
Rebuilding, right?
Right.
You were building. Now, you got to the point where you put a 12-4 team on the field. Mm-hmm. Then last year you had injury problems, Carr was beat up, and you had an offensive coordinator change and disruption in the locker room. So because of one bad season where you finally built up to where you might be good, you're going to blow up the entire thing and start from the very, very bottom. So that's my biggest problem with the way that they're doing it. I think they're not going about it in the right way.
But that's a fair point. I don't disagree with your premise at all. I do think, though, that I don't think they were as close as some people, including you, think they were. Khalil Mack, we can all agree, nobody wanted to see Khalil Mack trade.
Of course not.
Of course, nobody. Amari Cooper, good kid, good receiver, has not been consistent. Not all his fault, by the way.
No.
Okay.
And we'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a minute when we talk about Derek Carr and the offense. But not all his fault. And then you have Derek Carr, who now, again, same thing. Inconsistency, different playbook. But I just don't think that they were as close. And I'm not saying you tear everything down. But as Gottlieb said, and the reason I agree with this is because like a business, someone comes in. Reggie McKenzie was building, absolutely. No doubt. He was rebuilding. Now, Reggie McKenzie's no longer the top dog. He's a great guy. I love Reggie McKenzie.
I'll say this, though.
He's not the guy anymore. He's just not.
The roster they had at the end of 2017 was closer to being competitive than the roster they had at the start of 2018.
Did you watch the Patriots game in Mexico City and tell me that they were close?
Yeah. No. I said that team was closer. Closer
Last
than this
year's
team is now.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Well,
and it's because
closer to what?
Closer to being a competitive team. No, last year because of the injuries they had and because of the offensive coordinator change, where
they found some really good wins last season too. Just for the record, like the Chiefs game and the Dolphins in Miami.
We're gonna. Hey guys, this is
now.
Great discussion. We're gonna take a break and we come back. We're gonna continue because we're venting. We're doing everything we can to talk Raider football with all of you. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
Welcome back to Silver and Black today. We're watching, there's football on this morning from London. The Tennessee Titans have just pulled within one
of
the Chargers.
Go for two.
We'll see if they go for two.
Why not?
They should go for two. Why not?
Why not?
Their season's kind of over.
Good run by Mariota there.
It
Broke
really
a tackle
was.
at the 3.
It really
Stretched
was.
out. Look at that.
It's
Look at that.
Interesting game. The Chargers look like they're going to run away early with this one, but the Titans have hung tough. So that's good.
Oh, that's going to be close. That's going to be close. I don't know if he's in.
Uh-oh. We might see some instant replay here that'll turn that over. But we are back here. We're still talking through the Raiders stuff, and we're being joined now by attorney Michael Troiano. Michael, he's wearing his Bo Jackson jersey, Raiders jersey, not the Auburn jersey, the Raiders jersey. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see Michael now who's here. He's wearing his Golden Knights hat too after the big win last night, right?
It was an amazing time last night.
And last week you were on the road with the team, or a week and a half ago, right?
Yeah, I went to the Pittsburgh Penguins game, and then we drove through Gettysburg. I implore anyone to go into that city. It's amazing.
Wasn't it incredible how small that is?
Yeah.
That area where the battle was?
The history, everything.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. Me and my buddy only had about 2 hours, but it was a great time. And then we drove into a little bit outside of Philly, visited a friend, and then went to the Flyers game. Surprisingly, was not harassed or attacked in Philly. I didn't feel like I got the full experience.
Yeah,
were you wearing your Knights gear?
Oh
yeah,
man,
you were.
I had my custom jersey, nice. Vegas born with my year on it. I was born, everything. But they saved that for the playoffs.
they do, or for Santa Claus when they boo him. But we're here, and Michael, of course, is a criminal defense attorney here in Las Vegas, and one of our sponsors of the show. We want to thank him for doing that. Also, though, we usually talk about legal issues, but I have to say, surprisingly, we've had less in the NFL this year, so we don't have any arrests or anything to talk about. But you're a football guy, so we have you in talking about football. We're talking about the Raiders, so it's Michael Troiano, it's Matt Gutierrez, my co-host, and also David Stepanian, who's also here on the show as well. We are talking about the Raiders. Before the break, we were talking about did the Raiders need to be blown up? Are the Raiders tanking it? Are they rebuilding in midseason on a purposeful situation? And I'm not a Stephen A. Smith fan, but I want to play a cut from him, courtesy of ESPN, just because I know for Matt it'll be like getting a proctology exam. But here we go.
Better.
Yeah. Here we go. Here's Stephen A. Smith.
In this one instance, I will come to the complete, unadulterated defense of Jon Gruden. I don't believe that for 1 second. I don't believe that's in his character. And I certainly would never say that about our former colleague here at ESPN, who is as passionate as they come. I have a problem with his decisions. If anything, I think it's in reverse. I think his ego allowed him to moving beyond Khalil Mack, because he was thinking that me being the offensive genius that I am, combined with Derek Carr as my quarterback, can overcome any maladies that might exist on the defensive side of the ball. He was relying upon his brilliance, his passion, his commitment to excellence, et cetera, and he prioritized himself above the players. I don't believe that equates to tanking. I think that equates to the opposite, being a bit too arrogant where you didn't take into account the significance of Khalil Mack being gone. But to say that Jon Gruden would be associated with tanking, there is no way this man leaves the booth of Monday Night Football making the millions that he was making. And, oh, by the way, I got news for y'all. Even though it might have taken him a little bit longer to make that money, Jon Gruden would have ended up making that money here because he wasn't going nowhere for years to come, because this place wasn't going to let him go.
Not much longer to make it.
This place wasn't going to let him go. I can assure you all that Jon Gruden is back in football. Jon Gruden is back in football because that's where his passion lied and that's where he wanted to be.
Okay, so
God, that was like 25 seconds too long.
I know, but I never agree with him. Usually, I just think he's a bloviator. But I do agree with one of his main premises here, guys, which is the Khalil Mack was the domino. It really was. It was not a great choice by them, and if it was his choice, if we're to believe everything we've read, then it was a bad choice, and that's kind of how this restructure and this whatever you want to call it started out. So I don't have any problem with that. But once he did that, then I think you you have that was your franchise player, even more so than Derek Carr now that we look back at it.
Yeah, I disagree with that move based on not just on the field play, but locker room. I mean, he was the leader of that defense. You took one of your leaders and sent him away for a couple of draft picks. I don't understand the move from that aspect. I get it financially, but I don't think it was one that was necessary right away. And overall, what Gruden has done, I don't think he's made the right decisions in putting together a team. There's no, I unfortunately agree with Stephen A. Smith in the fact that I don't think that they're tanking, because what possible good could come of that? You need to play the season out. You need to be a good football team. There's no reason to tank. But they've gone about it the wrong way as far as personnel decisions have gone. They've made their team worse.
Michael, what do you think of Derek Carr?
I think he's replaceable.
Ah.
I mean, it's sad because I'm not a Raiders fan, so I can understand from the fan aspect. It's tough to see this, but as an overall football fan and more of a Las Vegas fan, this is the hard truth that we need. Gruden was given a 10-year contract, $100 million. This is his world. This is his baby. This is his everything. And to see these players stripped away, it's tough. Like, Mac is amazing. Like, I remember watching him, was it that Buffalo game when he came out, and you were just like, oh my God, it's a man amongst boys. And I used that comparison when I saw Cam Newton in Auburn. Like, it's, as a football fan, it is just, it changes your mindset when you watch the game and you see someone play it on such a different level. So as a fan, that's got to be very, very difficult to see. Oh, we got Titans go here for two.
They're going for two.
Mariota's dancing
They're
around. We got a flag.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And we're going to redo that play.
Anyway, let's see where that flag's in the end zone. That could be defensive backfield. We might get a redo.
It's very, very tough. I could imagine that as the fan of the team, it's got to be hard. But that's what he was given, and he's going to tear down the team. Carr is not going to be the quarterback, and I think everyone forgets this part of it from a couple years back, and this is what I believe he's trying to do. It's quote-unquote suck for luck. There's somebody out there in the college draft that we're not seeing right now that Gruden wants, and he's going to get him, and he's going to mold him.
Now, David, you have been a Raiders fan your entire life, right? You grew up in Los Angeles. What do you think? What do you think of Derek Carr?
I really don't want. I certainly hope that he gets everything in order. Because I really grew to like and care about this kid, and I really felt like he was our guy a couple years ago. I mean, he finished third in MVP voting. I really thought he was going to be one of the elites by now, by 2018. And I'm really disappointed. I don't want to give up on him yet, and I feel like I feel like I still have hope that he can turn things around. Maybe I'm not.
And I do too. I mean, I like Derek Carr, right? And I think he's a great guy. I think he's a good quarterback. I agree with Michael, though, that I think that you can never, in today's business of sport, you could never fall in love with one player too much. There are a few that you just don't trade, and they happen to trade one of them. But I think when it comes to a quarterback, you have to make the decision. Now, I think Derek Carr is going to have the rest of this year and probably next year to prove himself, unless something crazy. If they only win 2 games and they're a top 2 pick, things could change.
I 100% agree. I think they'll give him maybe the first few weeks of 2019 as well if he doesn't get it together by the end of the season.
Well, right now there's nobody there that's going to take his spot from him. Right. Honestly. I mean, he'll get the entire 2019 season.
Adrian McCarron?
And no, I don't see that happening at all. Unless they bring unless they draft a kid out of Oregon in this upcoming draft. But Carr looks
Oregon doesn't
shell-shocked,
produce
man.
good quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, we just saw one of them fail on the 2-point conversion. And
spoiler alert.
The hated Chargers will go on to win that game. But Carr looks shell-shocked, and he doesn't look like the quarterback that was progressing every year from his rookie season until last year. He looked like he was progressing, and whether it's the injuries or unfamiliarity with the last 2 systems now, he just doesn't look like the same quarterback. And if that trend continues, we said it a few weeks ago, Scott, next season is kind of the make or break year because that will be his second season in a familiar offense. He's only done that one other time, and it was the 2016 year. So if he can produce next season, and I don't think they're going to be competitive again next year because they've decimated this roster so much, but if he can be competitive as a quarterback and put up good numbers and look like the guy that we saw a couple of years ago, then maybe his job is secure. But if he looks like he looks now, he's done.
And we're going to take a break here in about 20 seconds. When we come back, though, we'll keep the entire round table here, all four of us, to talk about Derek Carr, too, because I think that actually, as much as he's got his own issues, most of the issues is the offensive line, and we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. here in Las Vegas.
Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbransen, on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
All right, welcome back to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. I want to give a special thanks today and shout out to the Southern Nevada Toyota dealers. 4 awesome locations: Findlay Toyota, Centennial Toyota, David Wilson Toyota, and Auto Nation Toyota. So I want to thank them and welcome them to listening to the show, and all of you as well, as we come back and we are, again, therapy session for suffering Raiders fans. We were talking about Derek Carr before the break with the team here, and I want to do that again as we kind of break this down on the bye week. Now, the other thing here is you talk about Derek Carr, his decision making. He's made poor decisions. There's no question. To me, though, the bigger issue is the offensive line. When you have an offensive line at this point, injured, young, all of the above, poor in spots, you cannot have a quarterback. If you look at what they did in London, I watched an hour and a half of video over the last 3 games over the course of the week, and what you saw was 3-step drop, 5-yard out patterns, 5-yard crossing patterns, because Jon Gruden can't call other plays. He can't call other plays if you're not going to get blocking guys.
I disagree with that.
He just can't. No, it's in the film. You can't disagree. You can look at it.
No, because Carr's getting rid of the ball before the pressure gets there. He needs to give himself an extra half a second of time, and it's there. The time is there. You're talking about world-class athletes that can get down the field 10 to 15, 20 yards even in under 3 seconds. There's enough time there to throw the ball vertically, not stretch the field 40 yards. There's enough time to find routes, whether it's quick hitches, whether it's comeback routes on the outside, whether it's quick digs. There is time there to do something more than throwing a 0.1-yard completion on average for an entire game. That's completely unacceptable.
Not in the Seattle game, it wasn't. If you watch the Seattle, no.
Yes,
if you look at the Seattle game, Colton Miller could not find any balance. I mean, he looked like baby Louie out there. He couldn't find any time there was an edge rush.
There are ways to roll protection. There are ways to chip block. There are ways to move the pocket. They do none of that.
Well,
and
he cut block.
Carr might be one of the worst quarterbacks I have ever seen, especially this season, at stepping up and giving himself time in the pocket. He does not press the pocket at all. He drops back, he feels pressure, and he folds instead of stepping up into the pocket.
I don't disagree with you.
There's time there.
I don't disagree with you when you look at some of their games. Last week, completely untrue. If you look at the film, there was no time. Feliciano on several times whiffed. I mean, he completely went out to block his man who went around him, and he just whiffed. And so Derek Carr had no time. So to me, you can't blame all Derek Carr, because when the play call comes in, yes, he can audible and change it, but half the time, or more than half the time, the calls were literally 3-step drop, go.
He threw 3 passes beyond the 10-yard line.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
3.
He has no time. How can you throw if you have no time?
He has more than...
No, he doesn't.
If you're going to drop back 40 times in a game, I have. If you're going to drop back 40 times in a game, you cannot tell me that only 3 times you had more than half a second to throw the ball 5 damn yards. We're talking about 5 yards.
No, I'm not saying only 3 times.
He would not throw the ball.
But they did. If you're not calling those plays, you limiting the offense. Your coach
No.
Your coach. Wait a minute. Your coach has no confidence in your offense, so you're limited in what you can do. That's some of that's on Carr. I don't disagree.
You're talking about calling plays as though there's no receivers in the patterns. The receivers are in the patterns.
But the patterns are all 5-yard little outs and in.
No, they're not. There was more there for him to take. There was more there.
About 8 or 9 times. That was it.
Which is 8 or 9 times more than he bothered. I'm telling you, man, he is unwilling. When he drops back, his first read is a dump off. He is unwilling to even look at his receivers down the field anymore. Watch his eyes, watch his body position, watch the body language when he drops back to throw. He gets the ball, and it's instantly left-right with the checkdowns. He's not looking down the field. He's not looking for guys to come open. You need to throw a guy open in a situation like that. You have enough time that on a 12-yard comeback, if you throw that guy open, you can get rid of the ball quickly enough that once he makes his break, the ball's on him. Carr's not even doing that. It's instant right to the flat every single time.
Yeah, I still disagree with you that I think you're giving too much credit to Derek Carr like he has that time. I don't think he has the time. I'm not making excuses for his errors and his lack of development in certain areas, including when there are wide receivers down open and he doesn't find them. That's all on him, absolutely. But majority of the time, specifically the Seattle game, more so than any of the other games all year, because I think you go back a couple games and it was all on him. But if you look at what has happened there, now Colton Miller should not even be playing, frankly, with the injury and where he's at. Then you have Feliciano, who's just not – he's an adequate backup but not great. And you have KO out, and you have Hudson who does Hudson things all the time. And on the right side, you have a rookie. It's just a crap show.
Let me ask you this. You said he doesn't have time. I'm not saying Carr has a lot of time. If you have a running back lined up in the backfield and he releases out into the flat, from the middle of the field over, it's 26 yards. If he's releasing out 10 to 15 yards and you get him the ball, how is that any different than a receiver going forward 10 to 15 yards and getting him the ball? The timing is the same. He's unwilling to look forward.
No, you're right. The timing is the same, although when you're dumping it in the flat, if you have a lot of pressure and your pass blocking is not doing well, you can get it out to the side and into the flat, but you can't necessarily get it vertical.
You can, though. I believe that he can.
That's fair.
That's fair. If he's willing to throw routes open instead of waiting until a guy gets open, there's time there.
Guys, what do you
need to soften the defense? You have to soften the defense
You
somehow.
have to, and I think that's the problem too. Now they're down Marshawn Lynch. What do you guys think? I mean, is more Carr or more offensive line?
Well, I think the difference between throwing it out 10, 15, 20 yards, like Matt's saying, and putting it out into the flat is it's part of Carr's mentality as far as the defensive rush is concerned, because part of their responsibility, depending on what the play is and the down in the situation, is coming out towards the flat and having that angle and that edge. So I agree with Matt that he's rushing it, he's throwing it too quickly, and he's concerned. And that's the difference, in my opinion, is when you're dumping those off in the flat, in the back of his head, he feels as if he dumps it out there, those defensive linemen still, some of them, depending on the play, have the responsibility to go out there and catch up with that player. So I think that's the difference in his mentality as far as throwing it down the line, up the middle. But you pick up Jordy, you pick up Martavius Bryant, you should be passing it deep. Those guys are incredible players. They're not dump-off receivers.
Yeah, you have to soften the defense up, right? I mean, you've got to make the linebackers, at the very least, respect the fact that somebody can get behind them, even a little bit, because those guys are all pressed in the box now, and you're essentially using your passing game as a running game, because if you look at the numbers, what was it? 0.1 yards per completion of airtime last week. That's not to say they didn't get some yards after the catch, but per completion of airtime. That means the ball is traveling from sideline to sideline without going forward at all.
No, but and that's my point about the film. If you watch the routes and the plays called, forget Carr. Everything was within 5 yards. There was there was a few times, especially earlier on, they went deeper, right? But overall, once they got down in the game, Gruden packed it in and said, I don't trust this offense to run anything else. So that's a coaching decision. Not saying the player doesn't factor into that. But from a coaching perspective, Jon Gruden said, these guys can't do anything, so I'm just going to give them 5-yard outs, and that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, Carr is averaging, about 5 yards per completion, and I think that's last in the league among quarterbacks who've started a game this season. He's just not timing his passes well, and he's not finding receivers, and I feel like those are two of the most crucial aspects of being a quarterback.
There's no doubt, and I think he's
throwing to receivers.
Imagine that, right? Imagine that, with the exception of Jared Cook. So the other thing is, he obviously, over the last few years, I think there is not a good relationship nor a good rapport, nor any confidence between Derek Carr and Amari Cooper. I think that's part of the problem with Amari Cooper. It's not all on Amari Cooper. Some of it's on that relationship. Why? I don't know.
Cooper's getting open. This theory that Cooper can't beat one-on-one coverage, can't beat man press coverage is absurd. Watch the coach's film. He gets open a lot. The problem is he gets open and Carr is already looking into the flat. And it's not always
somewhere
with
else.
pressure.
He's looking somewhere
He's
else.
looking underneath, quick dump off over the middle, or something in the flats. He's not looking at his receivers. It's almost as though he doesn't trust that his receivers will get open, or he's just unwilling to keep his eyes down the field anymore.
Well, and
in my opinion, Cooper's a superstar. I mean, he's one of those players that eventually the Raiders might let go. I hear these rumors, and then the Patriots will pick him up for some 5th or 6th round pick, and then they'll just seal their Super Bowl.
Well,
he is a legitimate star.
If they
in my
trade
opinion.
him to the Patriots,
no, they won't.
Man, I would not even come close to putting it past them at this point.
I think they're going to trade him, and I think the relationship and the mood overall for Amari Cooper with the Raiders organization is done. It's not necessarily anyone's fault because he's gone through a lot of different changes while he's there. But even Chris Carter, who knows him well, talked about on ESPN this week. He said, listen, this is a good kid. He's got all the talent in the world, but he just doesn't seem to have the passion anymore. And I think when you have a guy like that, there's nothing that will change that.
I don't know how true that is,
Well,
though.
I'm just saying that he knows him. But the point is, everybody thought Gruden could fire up anybody. Well, some of them it's not working, and so maybe a change of scenery will do him well. Now, the other thing, though, is I hear as well, you talk about not hitting receivers. You talked about Jordy Nelson, Michael. Mm-hmm. Jordy Nelson, again, another tool not utilized. You can say, well, is
They're
he
not
getting
throwing to him?
Exactly. If you look at it now, he's averaging 14.
Is there decaf in there? We could.
No, we're talking Raiders football in our roundtable therapy session today during the bye week. Jordy Nelson averaging 14.7 yards a catch, has 3 touchdowns. He's on a pace for 861 yards at 33 years old. I hear a lot of Raider Nation saying, oh, he's washed up, we got to get rid of him. What are you talking about? And this is where I would agree with you. Derek Carr's not finding him. He's getting open. The one thing Jordy Nelson, even at his age, does not have a problem doing is getting open. So, again, that's one where I'll agree with you and say, okay, why isn't the quarterback finding him?
Keyshawn and Coop and Jordy need to go write a Keyshawn book. Throw me the damn ball. Seriously, I mean, you got to get them the ball. You can't talk about receivers being unproductive when they never have the ball in their hands.
No.
You got to get them the ball. What would Cooper have? 1 target against the Chargers?
One target.
That's unacceptable.
How? And it's not because their defensive backfield was so stellar.
No.
So when you look at all of this and you look at what's happening with all of the free agents that the Raiders brought in, not all of them have worked out well. If we go through the list, okay, guys, ready? Marcus Gilchrist. Okay. Leon Hall, mainstay in the slot. That's fine, although Nick Nelson's coming up strong from what we hear out of practice. He might take that time. Dwayne Harris, fine. Kickoff's not what it used to be. He's doing fine as well. Frosty Rucker worked his way into a starting job, has actually done really well. That surprised me. Tahir Whitehead, okay, 3-down linebacker, sloppy tackling a little bit.
Yeah, he hasn't produced.
Needs to get better. Daryl Worley, Gruden is one of his guys. He loves him so much that he's looking to either trade or not play Garyon Conley, which is a little bit troublesome. Reggie Nelson, I don't think we need to even say anymore, right? Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie.
He's still in the league?
Yeah.
He is. Taking time from Connolly.
Yeah. Clinton McDonald, okay, he's done okay. Justin Ellis is on IR, so he comes on a little bit. Rashawn Melvin, we just talked about that story earlier. Martavis Bryant, let's talk about Martavis Bryant since we're talking about wide receivers. And he's a former Steeler, Michael. Martavis Bryant has not been what they thought he would be for a third-round draft pick, right? So we went through the whole weird thing of dropping him and then picking him back up. But he's had some nice catches, but he's also had 2 massive turnovers, right? So he's been disappointing in my book. But yet Carr seems to find him more than Jordy Nelson or Amari Cooper. So it's a weird situation. There's so much dysfunction. We're hearing more this week about dysfunction in the locker room amongst the players. And so you got to wonder how you keep it together, or do you do what they're doing and you just start tearing it down because it's just not working?
I mean, they're 2 completely different receivers as far as Martavis Bryant and Jordy Nelson's concerned. Martavis, you could hit a screen and he might go 90 yards. As big and tall, as lanky and awkward as he is, he's got that blazing speed. Where Jordy, you got to get out there 10, 15, 20 yards, and then he seems to find his rhythm. I mean, it's very disappointing to see the fact that they can't throw this ball down the field in today's NFL. They're amazing. I mean, I would keep them both. And as much as I believe that's what Gruden is attempting to do is tear down, break it, build it himself so he can build on his legacy, which is fine. If it works out, I'm not mad about it, but that's what he's trying to do. Let's all be honest here.
But I'll still die on the hill that this offensive line coming in, people thought was a strength. Then they draft these kids, and they say, oh, it's going to help for depth and all that. The offensive line is trash. It just is. And I'm not making excuses for other mistakes, including Carr's. I'm just saying the offensive line has to be really completely rebuilt. And at this point, even though I thought Colton Miller started the season well, and it might be the injury, I don't know, overvalued draft pick, absolutely. All right, we're going to step aside real quick. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
Drink.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Oh, Rodney Hudson, the one guy who is playing well on the offensive line for the Raiders, the 1-5 Oakland, soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. We are talking Raider football again, as we always do. So, guys, we are coming up here on the end of the show, and what the Raiders will do between now and then, and we've been having lively discussion in the breaks as well, which...
if you've been watching on the muted Facebook page, it probably looks like we're screaming and yelling at each other.
But it's all good. And you know what's funny is everybody in this room has great feedback and opinions on it, all well-founded, even though we disagree on some things. But I just think that for Raider fans out there, I mean, let's talk about that, because I think that's the bigger issue right now is, if you're a fan, what do you do? I mean, especially you're a longtime Raider fan. You've been putting up with this for a long time.
Yeah, same thing you've been doing for the last 20 years, really.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to, you just have to accept, I guess. I mean, accept the fact that it is going the way it's going this year. What I want to see, I'll just say this, what I want to see is some improvement at the quarterback position. They have to do something at offensive line. I'm shocked that they haven't signed somebody this off week. Maybe there's just nobody out there. But they have to have some bodies. They're out of bodies.
What happened? What was going on in all these first halves, like the first 4 weeks of the season, and now they can't even score points?
No.
What happened?
Again, it's a multitude of things.
Well, the offensive line getting banged up isn't helping things. I mean, Colton Miller started off well, and now he's injured. Donald Penn was playing on that right side, and even an injured Donald Penn is better than Feliciano or Parker at this point over there on that side. Osemele's out. I mean, the line is banged up. But the unwillingness now to even look at wide receivers, or even Jared Cook at this point, he's not even really looking at Cook anymore. Why is Jalen Richard the leading receiver on this team every single week as far as catches go?
Makes no sense.
No,
but here's the thing, guys. So and Michael, since you grew up a Steeler fan, there's talk that Garyon Conley might be on the trading block. There's the Le'Veon Bell situation out there. He's supposed to come back after next week. There's been some talk about that. The Steelers need some defensive back help. As Matt said during the break, so do the Raiders. But the Raiders also need a running back. What do you think? Would that be as a Steeler fan? Would you be okay with that trade?
I mean, the Rooney's like cheap. So if he's going to come for a 5th round pick, maybe pack his own lunch.
But if it's
like
Bell,
that.
and
Bell, yeah, he's gone. I don't care. I mean. He'll come in. He's either going to get traded. Very unlikely. I wouldn't bet $1 on that. He's going to come in week 10. He keeps toying with the team, and that's his thing. We're living in the age now where it's about Instagram and Twitter, and these kids are very, very childish. I don't care if he makes his money as a fan. I don't care if he shows up or doesn't show up. But to do that to his teammates and say that he's going to come in on a bye week and then not show up like he did this week, he's going to come in at week 10 to accrue that 5th year so he can get his retirement, which sounds silly because the next contract he signs is going to be guaranteed $50 million or God knows what it is going to be.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We got about a minute left, guys. Marshawn Lynch, does he play another game as a Raider?
No.
That's Matt?
He's done.
I think so, yeah.
You think so?
I think
this year?
Oh yeah. I think he's out a month. I think he'll come back in November. And I'll even throw you one better. If they're still in Oakland next season, I think he's still going to be on the team if they stay in Oakland.
I think he's done.
Michael,
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
There you go.
Well, I love Marshawn Lynch. I always will. I think he's a Hall of Famer. But I do not think he plays. I'm hearing more and more that
he doesn't want to play for
the
dumpster fire.
He doesn't want to play for the dumpster fire. So I think that his days are numbered. As is our time today. I want to thank David Stepanian, Attorney Michael Troiano. If you need anything from a legal perspective, especially criminal defense, Michael is your guy. Make sure you reach out, TroianoVegasLaw.com. Michael, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And Matt, as always, thanks, brother.
Go Dodgers.
All right, listen to us on the PG later today, 4 p.m. We'll recap all the NFL action. You've been listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll see you next week.